Hey, hi, thanks for joining me again. This is this week's installment of the Midweek online Bible study in which we've been going through the prayers of the Bible. I know somebody else is here and you're not used to seeing them. I'll address that in just a moment. This is just some girl that keeps following me all around, and then you just have to move on with your life at some point. But we'll get into that more specifically. It's a Midweek online Bible study. We've been going through the prayers of the Bible. We've been doing this for, believe it or not, half a year now on a pretty much a weekly basis. And I just thought it was time. Bill Batty's been my inspiration because every once in a while he'll stop and just do a quiz. So we're going to do something different this week. We're going to stop and do a quiz based on some of the prayers that we've gone through so far. I just started on the first week's prayer and asked one question, and they're multiple choice, and there's no penalty for wrong guesses. But it is multiple choice. And I encouraged my wife, Heather, to join me this week, and she was willing to. Isn't that great? I think she'll add some nice color to it. And these questions, honestly, I don't want to set you up to feel really bad if you can't get the answers, but I didn't craft these questions to be terribly hard. I'm hoping that for those who pretty regularly watch this Midweek online Bible study, that they might just be refreshers, and also some of this is just kind of fun too. So two things. And so if you get any of these wrong, you could jeopardize my qualifications as a pastor. No pressure.
Okay.
But keep it in mind.
Yikes.
No, actually, she knows at least as much about the Bible as I do, and probably more. Did that sound arrogant? I didn't mean to say I even know a ton about the Bible. But can you imagine another person knowing as much about the Bible? Yeah, you can, because you go to church with Bill Batty. But anyway, we are going to, I've just picked out 10 questions for 10 different sessions of this that we've done in the past.
Nice.
You ready for this?
I think so. Should I do jumping jacks or anything?
That's always a good idea, but not here on camera. So we're going to start right out with Genesis chapter 24. You're certainly free to turn there. I know when going through school, probably you didn't have a lot of open book tests, but that's always fine to do in the Bible, especially if that'll get that wound up in your thinker better than if you were just trying to guess. So if you remember, which you probably don't, I didn't, and I'm the one that did it. Our first session was on Genesis 24, verses 12 through 14, and that was a prayer of Abraham's servant for direction in finding a wife for Abraham's son. Okay?
I do remember that.
Okay.
I wouldn't have been able to pull it out of my
You mean you
memory.
watched it? Or you remember the...
I remember I don't remember if I watched it or listened to it. I might have listened to it.
This is going really well so far, and I bet you all remember it too. So, a prayer of Abraham's servant for direction in finding a wife for Abraham's son. Here is your question, one of 10 questions. What was the name of Abraham's son who Abraham sent his servant to go find a wife for? And it's multiple choice. So here are your choices. Was it Mephibosheth? Mephibosheth?
Do you mean Mephibosheth?
Mephibosheth. See, she knows at least as much about the Bible as I do.
And that's not the right answer.
No, whenever I came up to that word in the Old Testament, I always felt like, I know some people have trouble reading old names in the Bible and kind of like pass them. And I always think I do pretty well with that. And whenever I get to his name, I'm like, I bet a lot of people have a problem with this, and I rock it. And I think usually I do say it however you just said it, but
right?
I mean, that's my excuse. But so Mephibosheth? That's what you said, right?
That's how you would say that name.
Yeah, Mephibosheth?
That's not my answer, though.
Okay, number 2, Ishmael. Again, this is which son Abraham was sending his servant to go look for a wife for. Number 3, Isaac. Or number 4, Nimrod. Pronounced beautifully off my lips.
Nice job.
So, Mephibosheth, Ishmael, Isaac, or Nimrod. Heather, what do you think?
Should I comment on some of the other answers, or just give you the real thing?
Oh, this is free form, whatever you want to do.
Okay. Well, Ishmael is one of Abraham's sons.
That's a good point.
That was Hagar's son.
Yeah.
But that's not the answer.
Okay.
The answer was Isaac.
I like how you draw it out. Like, what's that? Do you want to be a millionaire? Do you want to call a friend?
Right.
Would you like to call a deaconess? Okay.
Not yet. I'll save that for later.
So your answer was what?
Isaac.
Isaac is correct. Maybe what I should ask you for each of these is which of the 4 choices I give you is the most untrue. That would be kind of fun too.
Yeah.
So, and that would probably be
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 2, moving right along. Genesis chapter 32, verses 9 through 12. I think you're doing a great job, though. You're adding a lot to this.
You are too.
Thanks. This is Genesis 32, verses 9 through 12. It's a prayer of Jacob to God regarding the fear that he had for his brother. And the question is this: what was the name of Jacob's brother whom he feared? Here are your 4 choices. I know she's chomping at the bit and knows it already, but I took the time to write these 4 choices, so I'm going to read them to you. The first one is... No, I didn't. That's not one of the ones.
That's going to be one of the options from now on.
It should be. It's a bonus question. Extra credit. Okay, number 1. Was it Cain? Again, this is what was the name of Jacob's brother whom he feared and was the impetus for this prayer. Was it Cain? Was it Jehoram? Was it Isaac? Or was it Esau?
That one is Esau.
Very good.
Jacob and Esau.
Yeah, rolls right off the tongue if you've grown up in church and you read your Bible.
They were twins.
Weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, one of them was quite hairy.
Yes, and red.
Now, why did Jacob fear his brother? That's a bonus question.
Because Jacob had stolen his brother's birthright and also the blessing of Isaac just before he left.
Jacob was a little stinker.
He
was a conniver.
was a trickster.
Yeah, he was a trickster, and even though Esau was complicit Esau gave up things, and he doesn't understand negotiation that well. I mean, some of you might use Facebook Marketplace, and you wheel and deal, and Esau gave up his birthright for, what was it? How many $1 million?
Well, he was starving. He thought he was going to die from hunger.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And he gave up his birthright. That's why you should never shop hungry. Number 3, Genesis chapter 48, verses 15 and 16. This is the prayer of blessing for Jacob's grandsons. This is a more formal prayer that we went over. Yeah, look at that. She's doing little nonverbal tricks for you. But what were the names of the 2 grandsons that Jacob blessed? I will tell you, if this helps at all, that let me ask you this. He blessed those 2 grandsons. They were his grandsons, but who was their father? Which one of Jacob's sons was their father?
Joseph.
Very good. And Joseph is the one I've confessed to you before and probably exampled to you before, that I get confused sometimes when I want to say Jacob. I say Joseph. I think that's the case. So here are your 4 choices. What were the names of the 2 sons? Was it Ephraim and Manasseh? Was it Nathaniel and Matthew? Don't giggle, you might give it away. Was it, your 3rd choices, was it Tom and Jerry? Or was it James and John? What do you think? The 2 names of the grandsons that Jacob blessed that were Joseph's sons.
Well, there are a couple names in your suggestions that are Old Testament names. The others are all at least New Testament.
Good point. So
I don't know anybody in the Bible named Tom or Jerry.
No. In fact, I can't even think of a mention of a cat.
Oh,
or
Thomas.
A mouse.
There's Thomas.
Oh, right. Doubting Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Right.
So, my answer is Ephraim and Manasseh.
Nailed it. You're 3 for 3. That's good.
And
100%.
as a bonus,
yep,
one of Sarah Fisher's children is named Manasseh.
That's right. And 2 of Bill Batty's children and Sue's children are named Tom and Jerry. Okay, moving on. Luke 18, verses 9 through 14. This was the interesting. was one of the interesting ones that we did because it wasn't an actual thing that happened. It was part of the narrative in a parable that Jesus told. It's the parable of the prayer of both the Pharisee and the tax collector. And their prayers were very different. And at the end of them, Jesus gives us the answer to this. But I'm going to ask you, of these two men and their respective prayers, which one, this isn't multiple choice. Well, it is. You only have two choices. Which one of these men went down to his house justified, the Pharisee or the tax collector?
The tax collector.
That's weird, huh? Because the Pharisees, weren't they like, by all optics, weren't they pretty good people? And they were involved in religion. They were religious people.
Yes, they were, and much like many religious people of today, everything can look good from the outside, but God sees the heart.
Ouch. It's true.
And that Pharisee did not have a humble heart about what he was doing. He was proud of what he was doing. And I think it's okay to be proud of your good works, but it's not good to bring your good works as if that is what pleases God. It's your heart attitude.
Yeah, and the tax collector, for a heart attitude, brought a very humble, and it didn't seem like he was putting on pretense. Like he really seemed like sincerely he recognized his need before God. And just like we talked about last week, when we talked about Isaiah being commissioned to God to go to these people, and we talked about the importance of heart attitude, and that these people's hearts were hard towards the things of God. So God's word was received to them as condemnation and judgment rather than something that would draw them to repentance and would be what it is called the good news. So, yeah, great, Heather. You're 4 for 4. I'm not surprised. Here's our fifth question. After this one, we'll be halfway through roughly. This is a long swath of scripture here. Exodus 3 and then the first 17 verses of Exodus 4. I think the narrative actually goes even deeper, but that's what we concentrated on that week. And this is a big narrative of Moses at the burning bush. In that, God commissioned Moses for a task. What was the task? Here are your 4 choices. Was it to free the Israelites from bondage to Egypt? Was it to drill a well for Ben-Hadad? Hey, Dad. Was it, number 3, to increase Egyptian frog production? Or was it, number 4, to deliver the gospel to the Gentiles? Do you need those choices again?
No, I'll take number 1.
That was to free the Israelites from bondage to Egypt.
That's my probably correct guess.
Yeah, that you nailed it. That's good. There's one that you could. I mean, I put in there to be funny about the increase in Egyptian frog production. That was a byproduct of part of the wonders that God demonstrated through Moses, whose first purpose was to release the Israelites from bondage. So one of the plagues was a bumper crop of frogs. And it was beyond cute, like, hey, look at all the toads. It was cumbersome at best. Okay, we're halfway there.
That'd be really gross to have to swipe frogs off of your seat before you sat down and then having them jump on you while you're trying to eat and pushing them away from your food.
And then I think about in the summer when we get slugs around the property and you kind of on moist nights, you don't want to walk barefoot because you get, I'm sorry if you're eating here, but slugs between your toes and stuff.
Oh, that's never been that bad.
I just thought...
that's a gross thought.
But if you were stepping on frogs walking all around...
Yeah.
And plus frogs are they're ugly and cute. It's hard to figure out what they are.
Yeah, like Cabbage Patch Kids.
Right. They're best not stepped on. So we're halfway there. So moving right along to 1 Kings Chapter 3, by the way, you haven't got one wrong yet.
I'm pretty pleased.
You're the P-dub, the pastor's wife. 1 Kings Chapter 3, verses 6 through 14. That was Solomon's prayer for wisdom. This is timely, right? Because we're going through Ecclesiastes in the Sunday morning services, reading about one of Solomon's gifts to us and his a declaration of all the vanity in life in trying to find ultimate purpose in things that cannot satisfy outside of God. In that prayer that that Solomon had asked of God for wisdom, God was pleased with that kind of a request. And he was pleased that Solomon asked for wisdom instead of, so God had said, I'm glad that you asked for this is my paraphrase, instead of asking for this. What was God happy that Solomon didn't ask for in contrast? Was it either ham and cheese on rye? Some of these are easier than others. Was it faith, love, and hope?
Those are good things.
Aren't they? But the best of those is what?
Love.
Yeah. Who said that?
Paul.
I'm telling you, you know your stuff.
In 1 Corinthians 13.
We just went over that in our Sunday morning services too, but I bet she even knew it before that. I think she lip syncs the sermons as I deliver them. She doesn't even need this information. So, ham and cheese on rye, faith, love, and hope, long life, riches, or the life of his enemies. That's all one possibility of an answer. Or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah. That's a really hard choice, but I'm going to go with long life, riches, or the life of his enemies.
6 for 6. And I bet you're 6 for 6 back at home too.
Yeah.
Both Tom and Jerry as they do this. Okay, number 7 of 10. We're in Joshua 5 verses 13 through 15. This is the prayer, the conversation between Joshua and the commander of the Lord's army. After the commander of the Lord's army responded to Joshua's question, what did Joshua do? Here are your 4 choices. Number 1, did Joshua fall on his face to the earth and worship? Did Joshua climb up a sycamore tree? Did Joshua gather jars to be filled with oil? Or lastly, did Joshua ask to be baptized in the Jordan?
Oh, those are all good things too. But the answer is number 1. He fell on his face and worshipped.
Very good.
Which would not be acceptable if the commander was just an angel.
Why?
Because nobody should be falling on the ground and worshiping anything but God.
And angels recognize that. Angels won't accept worship.
Right. And so the fact that this commander accepted that worship was proof that it was God.
Proud of you, Heather.
Thank you.
Question number 8, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the first 10 verses. This is about Paul's thorn in the flesh. In response to Paul's prayer for deliverance from that thorn in the flesh, what did God say was sufficient for Paul? You remember, God didn't take away the thing that Paul was praying for, and we hypothesized, theorized what it might have been. It wasn't probably a thorn in his flesh, but that might have been representative for relational persecution that he was suffering, or some sort of a physical ailment. Those are 2 of the more likely possibilities. But in response to it, God said he did have something that was sufficient for him. Here are your 4 choices as to what that might have been. Number 1, did God say that it was sufficient for Paul, that Paul had a belief in himself? So was it Paul's belief in himself?
You can do it.
Right. Number 2, topical ointment? Told you not to giggle. Number 3, comfort of friends? Or, do you want to guess which one it is before I even give you the 4th one?
I'm pretty sure it's number 4.
Number 4, let's see, is God's grace.
Grace.
Yeah. That's it, God's grace. God said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made strong in weakness. I think I might have butchered that. My power is magnified in weakness. Some of this depends on what translation you have too. That's what I'll blame that on. Number 9. These are the last 2 questions are both in Nehemiah, one in chapter 9 and one in chapter 10. That was also a long swath of scripture. I did that around election time in the U.S. So that we could draw inspiration from a nation such as Israel and their heart condition before God and their recognition of where their problems truly came from. As we considered administration changes and the powers of government and what really ultimately vexes us in our lives. So, question number 9, Nehemiah chapter 9 was when Israel confessed their sin. Upon who did the Israelites place blame for the bondage and challenges that they suffered throughout their history? Who did they blame for that? Here are your 4 choices. Number 1, did they place blame upon themselves and their forefathers? Number 2, did they place blame upon difficult economic conditions? Number 3, did they place blame upon a corrupt government? Or lastly, did they place blame upon Satan? Who could it be? Who could it be? I just don't know. Could it be
Number 1.
themselves?
And their forefathers.
Themselves and their forefathers. They were very specific about that, and that was a mark of humility that they were willing to, something that we've said around here a few times in this house, own their own junk. They were able to own their own junk, and it was because of their rejection of the prophets and their idolatry and the seeking of their own sin and many number of things. But all of it was at the root was sin, was missing the mark, was straying from God. And so that was indicative of themselves and forefathers. Now let's be true. All of us have that seed of sin in us. It wouldn't be wrong for all of us to pray in confession to sin. In fact, we must. But in this instance, that was what they did.
That was Nehemiah, right?
In chapter 9.
Okay, when they were building the wall, rebuilding the walls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm not showing off. I just wanted to connect.
Well, and you might expose me a little bit too, because some of these are like months old since I've been looking at them more closely, and I don't want to say something wrong.
I won't ask anymore.
Okay, Nehemiah chapter 10, so that comes directly after 9 in most translations. This is the prayer for the Israelite oath. So right after they confessed in very specific, humble detail with God, they made a commitment to God verbally. In making a covenant with God after their prayer of confession, Israel committed to obey God's law that was given by who? Here are your 4 choices. So they said that we will obey the law of God given through, was it Adam? Was it Jesus? His name hasn't come up yet in this whole quiz.
Everything relates to Jesus.
Adam. That was such a holy thing to say. So choice number 1, Adam. Choice number 2, Jesus Christ. Choice number 3, the Ethiopian Eunuch. I'm making these up as I go because I forgot to give choices for that.
You didn't even look down for that.
I know. I'm a no-look pastor. Like a no-look pass in the NBA. I didn't mean it that way, but it came out funny. So Adam, Jesus, the Ethiopian eunuch, or Moses.
I've forgotten the question, but I'm pretty sure Moses is the answer.
Yeah, it was Moses through whom God's law was given to the nation of Israel. Hey, did she not do a good job or what? Give her a hand. I can't hear you. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for joining us. Remember to be in God's Word. A lot of this is trivia, right? And ultimately, it's more important that we know God by walking with Him. But it's indispensable to know these different pieces of information about the Bible because they're all building blocks upon which we can build a faith in that God and be able to communicate Him to other people through His resume in the Scriptures. So thank you for joining us. Always be in the Word. And again, be in prayer. Harmonies of Praying Church. Let's just lean right into that. Love you all and have a great week.
Bye-bye.